Before I get into my report, I beg your indulgence for a moment. I've been thinking a lot about what we have experienced since we were last together in person 3 years ago and how things have played out. It's a bit much for me to contemplate, and I know it is for all of you as well. The past 3 years have been rough on all of us, but particularly for our frontline colleagues who have had to stare down the worst of COVID-19. Those of you who know me are aware of my election to this office was the fulfillment of a dream for me. Not because I decided years ago that I wanted to be president of the ANA. That was just icing on the cake. Rather, it was because I decided early on that in answering the call to be a nurse, I wanted to have the greatest possible impact on the people that I cared for, on my profession, and on my community. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to do as much for nursing as this profession has done for me. And I've had some things I wanted to do, specific issues I wanted to focus on, and some specific goals. And then along came COVID-19, and our world was turned upside down. To be sure, I'm as eager and excited as anyone to embrace the challenge. But I think all of you would agree that this was an extraordinary moment in history. And it was truly awful. 1 million people died in just a couple of years through spikes and drops and new variants. 1 million people. There are only 10 cities in the United States that have more than 1 million people living in them. This huge city where we are here today has 700,000 people. Millions of Americans got really sick and had to go to the hospitals where our colleagues did their very best to take care of them. They were called upon to perform superhuman feats, endless shifts, scrambling for protective gear, and early on having to do without, wondering if they could escape infection as they cared for the sick, separating from their families to avoid carrying the virus home to them, holding the hands of dying patients because their own family members were not allowed to be with them. And many of our dedicated and courageous colleagues did get sick, and many died. Many more suffered greatly from stress and burnout. Often it was the physical demands of what they had to do. Often it was a mental health issue, the unrelenting stress of having to balance their commitment to patient care with the extraordinary demands of working through a pandemic. Watching people die despite their heroic efforts and having to face the unknown every single day. Today, the miracle of vaccines and new therapeutics has helped to take some of the fight out of this. It's enabled us to manage it better, brought the death rate way down, but the variants keep on coming. And while there is cause for optimism, we don't really know for sure what is over the horizon. We are seeing cases rise again. According to the CDC, there have been more than 4.7 million hospitalizations and nearly 1.1 million lives lost to COVID-19. You may recall that at last year's membership assembly, I said, and I quote, "It looks like the worst of this pandemic is behind us," unquote. Since then, we have experienced both Delta and Omicron. But even by last year, we were determined to move forward. We have a deeper understanding of the pandemic. The vaccines were working, and we were beginning to really focus on applying our hard-earned experience, and particularly that of frontline nurses during the pandemic, to right some wrongs, and yes, point the way to a thriving future. And as an organization, we're going to have to continue to address this challenge, to lead on the response, to fight for millions of nurses across the country, and always, always put the patients first. If there is one consolation to this moment, it is that conditions have improved and we are here together today. After 2 years of being remote and distant and virtual, I am overjoyed that we're finally able to gather in person. ANA is a special community, and as any special community, it is especially special to be able to gather again, to talk, to laugh, and okay, maybe engage in some spirited debate and disagreement, but not too much, okay? Seriously, I have missed being with you. The Dalai Lama has said, tragedy should be utilized as a source of strength. No matter what sort of difficulties, how painful experience is, if we lose our hope, that's our real disaster. Even before this pandemic, the stories from across America, stories of nurses rising to the challenge, saving lives, changing lives, and opening the door to a new day has always been there. That is why you and I are advocates and activists. That is why we commit to improvements and to lifting up our profession and our colleagues. That is why we are determined to make things better and to support and participate in an organization dedicated to doing just that. So with deep humility and recognizing the extraordinary courage and sacrifice of nurses everywhere, I say onward. Onward with hope and determination to make a difference. Because we have to. As always, nurses are called upon to lead the way. And that's what we shall do. When I was first elected to this position, I set out to lead in several priority areas. I based these priorities on issues I had experienced in my own career as a nurse and as an advocate for improvements in public health and our profession. I vowed to make it a priority to address diversity in nursing, as well as racism in our profession and the country at large. I felt, and I continue to believe, that we can be a big part of the solution. Nursing and ANA needs to better represent the diverse population of patients. Why? Because it means higher quality care for patients. I also believe that a more diverse nursing workforce will be more effective in helping our society address the growing racial disparities in healthcare and health outcomes. With an honest and methodical look at diversity in nursing, we could see the progress that has been made over time, but we can also see the shortcomings. Nursing still does not reflect the racial makeup of our society at large. There were strong indications that racism was still a problem, a big problem, right in our own ranks. Then came COVID-19, and the things got even more real. As a part of its COVID-19 survey series, the American Nurses Foundation discovered that Black and Latino nurses were more likely than their white colleagues to be in roles providing direct care to infected patients. And they themselves were more than twice as likely to have been infected with the virus. That was disappointing and horrifying. But it also indicated that we are right to make ending racism in nursing a key priority of ANA. I am heartened that ANA is now being more intentional by engaging with those nursing organizations that were formed to represent minority and ethnic nurses. We are working very hard to deliver on the promise of a collaboration that has genuine impact. A key forum that has been for this has been the National Commission to Address Racism in Nursing, which was established last year and has made great strides in this endeavor. I urge this assembly to continue to make this a key issue for ANA. I also urge you to vote yes on ANA's reckoning statement. It is strong. It will serve our cause and our organization in practical ways. It will be an important touchstone to help drive the further work that our organization must do to take this struggle to a new level of effectiveness and impact. I thank the ANA Board for setting in motion all the work that has been done on the commission and the reckoning statement. And to our dedicated staff colleagues who put their heart and soul to this, you really did a phenomenal job. And you have, yes, thank you. And you have both my deepest respect and enduring gratitude. With that, in the work of the Commission, and in everything we do, let's resolve to understand the problem and redouble our efforts to drive racism and racial bias out of nursing once and for all. And let's move on from there as an organization to help American society address these difficult issues as well. Let's keep the faith and let's lead by example. In a country that is still crying out for leadership on matters of race and fairness, let's demonstrate what success looks like. Confronting racism issues across society at large, let's show others what success looks like, as nurses do on so many other important issues. We have applied this approach to other priorities as well, such as improving the profession of nursing, and those who devote their lives to it. Here is another area where the pandemic lifted the veil. It shed new light on the role of nurses in our health system, the challenges they faced on the job, and the value of their lived experience in finding ways to improve healthcare delivery across the board. Perhaps more than ever, nurses and other health providers are recognized for the compassionate, life-saving, and life-giving work they do, often under the most difficult of circumstances. It's true that the trust that Americans place in us is, of course, nothing new. I was delighted but not surprised to see this year's Gallup poll once again found nursing to be the profession voted by the public as the most ethical and honest for the 20th year in a row. Let's not lose sight of the value of this trust that is placed in us. It obligates us to use it, to make nursing even better, to improve patient care by improving conditions for nurses, to make healthcare better, to make life better for all. I have long felt that a key objective of ANA is to work as an organization to increase nurses' engagement with consumers, and through that, to elevate consumers' understanding of the value of nursing. This has been a key priority of my term in office. We need to continue to do everything we can to get the word out, like the work we do to elevate the profession during Nurses Month, and specifically like the work we did to produce as part of the Year of the Nurse and Midwife, the documentary American Nurse Heroes, which ran on cable TV last year and was well received. When everyday people are reminded about the extraordinary efforts nurses make on their behalf, their patients' families, their communities, and to the quality of healthcare, they get it. They immediately understand the importance of supporting nurses and empowering them so that they can continue to make a difference. It seems like that it would be a no-brainer and a slam dunk. But we have to be proactive about it in this crazy, media-driven, what have you done for me lately world. As with vaccines, there is such misinformation to combat. But this is where we have to leverage the trust that nurses have with people. People look to us, and we need to use that strength that we have, the power of nursing. Since the global outbreak began, we have advocated for clear, evidence-based guidelines and resources to ensure our nation's registered nurses and frontline healthcare providers can safely and effectively respond to the virus and protect the public. And ANA worked hard to educate, to disseminate information, to take a stand on vaccines, and to advocate that nurses have priority access to vaccines so they are protected while caring for others. The indisputable fact is that when nurses are protected, patients are as well. Let's not mince words. When it comes to public health, our advocacy has been a huge difference. ANA's advocacy on vaccines, on COVID-19 mitigation and treatment strategies, and on healthcare disparities has saved lives. But the public-private healthcare system we have in this country results in a push for savings that holds down wages, suppresses staffing levels, and often forces nurses to work beyond reasonable limits. We need to push for change in our system so that nurses are better equipped to provide the best patient care possible. The pandemic was a wake-up call that we cannot expect nurses to keep pouring from an empty cup. A healthier America stands with healthy nurses, not just in terms of their surroundings and work settings, but also inside, in their hearts, in their minds. No one was really prepared for this pandemic, and we know we should have been. We must look forward and take forward the lessons learned. And now it's up to us to make sure that every possible action is taken to better prepare our nation, our communities, and our healthcare systems, as well as nurses and all healthcare professions for the next healthcare crisis. Another priority I had when I took this job was to use every available means to grow ANA's membership. Of course, it begins by ensuring that nurses know that they have a professional home in ANA, and that we listen, understand, and meet their needs in this ever-changing environment. By being nimble and responsive, I'm proud to share that overall, our membership has increased during the pandemic. More importantly, I believe that we have done much work to lay the groundwork for future growth, not only growth in membership numbers, but also in the impact of our advocacy work. As you know, this is the last time that I will address this assembly as your president. Term limits are a good thing. They provide an opportunity to get fresh leadership from someone who is likely to be shorter. Still got my humor. Last month, I had the opportunity to speak in person again at nursing school commencement ceremonies. This is one of the great joys that comes with the position I've held. As we know, even under normal circumstances, nursing school can be rigorous and challenging. And it's hard for me to imagine what it would be like to study nursing in the middle of a dangerous pandemic and what these students have had to endure. Studies show that some of the worst burnout and emotional anguish have occurred among the newest in our profession. And you know what? From the graduates I encountered this spring, I experienced as much energy, as much hope, idealism, and enthusiasm for the profession as I have ever seen or heard. These graduates probably have a more realistic sense of what awaits them in their careers than any class before them. Yet they also know more about the power of nursing than anyone before them. From that experience, I can tell you that we're going to be okay. The profession will not only survive, it will thrive. The next generation of nurses will be the best one yet. I see ANA as a limitless force for good. It has accomplished great things over the years. But being here with you today and feeling your energy, I know that our organization's best days and most impactful days are still in the future. To the staff at ANA, thank you. Over the course of my term in office, you have gone beyond the extra mile. I promised myself I wasn't going to do this. You have responded in the most exemplary ways to one of the worst crises of our profession, our organization, and our country has ever faced. From the first days of the pandemic, you moved into high gear to get nurses and other providers the equipment and the knowledge that they needed to do their jobs, to properly care for stricken patients, and to protect themselves. Through it all, you had their backs. You have made a difference, and I will never forget what you did. And finally, to you, the representatives to this membership assembly, many of you longtime colleagues, as Dr. Malone said last night, she knew me when I was a little boy, and friends, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for enabling me to serve ANA and the nursing profession. It has been the opportunity of a lifetime, and I will be forever grateful for the trust and the faith that you put in me. God bless you all. Thank you.